Welcome. I'm Amber Godfrey, a digital teaching and learning consultant for the Department of Public Instruction. I've created this webcast geared toward those who will be evaluating instructional technology facilitators, or ITFs. I hope this webcast will support you as you evaluate the performance of your ITFs. In this webcast, I'm going to explain each of the steps of the evaluation process. As an evaluator or as an instructional technology facilitator, you will be accessing the Instructional Technology Facilitator Evaluation Instrument through Homebase this year. It is important to note that instructional technology facilitators must be set up with the correct object codes to be recognized as instructional technology facilitators by the system. These codes are imported from payroll. So if the system recognizes your instructional technology facilitator, for example, as a classroom teacher, check with payroll to determine if the problem is the object code being imported. The NESIS object code for instructional technology facilitators is 135 and their purpose code is 5860. We know that in practice, instructional technology facilitators are oftentimes certified teachers whose instructional leadership and instructional practices are evident in their professional standards, especially standards 1 and 4. But to connect with the instructional technology facilitators evaluation tool in the system, ITFs must be distinguished from classroom teachers using the accurate object code. Now let's take a look at the components of the evaluation process. The first component of the evaluation process is that you and your ITFs are trained on the process. This could be a variety of training, including training that your LEA has provided or the Department of Public Instruction. It could be face-to-face training, or it may be virtual training, such as this webcast. Step 2 of the process is to provide your instructional technology facilitator with the rubric and the user's guide, as well as the schedule as to when all of the components of the evaluation process will be completed. Something to note on the orientation is that it should take place within the first 2 weeks of school. The next step of the process is the self-assessment, where the instructional technology facilitator goes through the rubric and rates him or herself. Whether to share this is self-assessment with the evaluator or not is at the discretion of the ITF. Something that I share with ITFs is that completing the self-assessment can be very useful because it may focus attention on terminology or concerns that need to be discussed or clarified with principals or the evaluator in the pre-observation conference, which is the next step of the process. So something that I will also recommend to you as an evaluator is that prior to the pre-observation conference, you also review the rubric descriptors for the ITF and note terminology and/or concerns that you want to discuss and clarify with your instructional technology facilitator, because it's important that you both have the same understanding of the rubric descriptors and the same expectations, because this process is really a partnership between you and your ITF. The pre-observation conference is the next step in the process, and this conference is not just about the upcoming observation. In the pre-observation conference, you and your ITF may go over his or her self-assessment if he or she chooses to share it. It's also an opportunity for you and your ITF to review his or her current professional development plan, or PDP, and you also discuss the lesson that's going to be observed. Something to note about the PDP is that for those of you who are using the evaluation instrument for the first time this year, your instructional technology facilitator needs to complete the professional development plan at the beginning of the year for this year only. In the future, the PDP is going to be step 8 of the process. This is also known as the PGP, or Professional Growth Plan. And again, the terminology Professional Growth Plan and Professional Development Plan are used interchangeably in the user's guide. So the pre-observation conference is not just about the upcoming observation. It's a great opportunity for you to have conversations with your ITF about the rubric descriptors and how your Instructional Technology Facilitator will be implementing those descriptors during the year. It is an opportunity for you and your ITF to discuss terminology and share expectations for the upcoming year. Or there may be rubric descriptors that you want to clarify with your ITF. This pre-observation conference is an opportunity for you to do just that. The observation is the next step in the evaluation process, and the observations are determined by your Instructional Technology Facilitator status. If your ITF has a probationary status, then you will conduct a minimum of 3 formal observations on the ITF's performance. If your Instructional Technology Facilitator is career status, then you will have 2 observations. However, one will be formal and the other 2 may be informal, and again, that's a minimum of 3. So for probationary status, there is a minimum of 3 formal observations, and with career status, there will be 1 formal observation and 2 informal observations at a minimum. In the post-observation conference, which will take place within 10 days of the formal observation, as an evaluator, you'll discuss with your Instructional Technology Facilitator and document on the rubric the strengths and weaknesses that were observed in the ITF's performance. The summary evaluation conference occurs at the end when components of the process are complete and the evaluator and Instructional Technology Facilitator go over the rubric, discuss the ratings for each of the elements and the ratings for the overall standards based on formal and informal observations and artifacts. So in this conference, you discuss components of the process like the PGP, the observations, and artifacts that were submitted or collected during the year that document performance. As part of this conference, you determine a rating for each of the elements, and the evaluation instrument's user's guide notes that ratings should be jointly reviewed and agreed to by the Instructional Technology Facilitator and evaluator during the conference. So in this conference, you reach a consensus about the rating for each of the elements. It's at this point that, as the evaluator, you also provide written comment on elements that were marked not demonstrated. You determine overall ratings for each of the standards. You review the required summary rating form that you've completed with the Instructional Technology Facilitator. Part of this process also includes the ITF having the opportunity to comment, and then you and the ITF sign off on the process. Now, before I leave this step and go to the last step, one more thing that I'd like to note about the ratings and determining the ratings is that if the ITF is rated developing or not demonstrated, then the evaluator should strongly encourage the development of a goal to address the area where proficiency is not achieved. This could be noted in the ITF's PGP or PDP. The last step in this process is developing the PGP for the next year. So your Instructional Technology Facilitator for this step will formulate their PGP taking into consideration observations from this year. For example, Instructional Technology Facilitators may form goals based on areas that the observations showed needed improvement. The PGP includes standards and elements that needed to be strengthened, goals that need to be accomplished, activities to complete, and the timeline for completing those activities to achieve the goals. And then the final step in the process is you as the evaluator discussing this plan with your ITF and approving it. I hope that as the evaluator of Instructional Technology Facilitators, you found that this webcast will benefit your practice. At any time during the evaluation process, if you have a question or need clarification, feel free to contact me or your regional digital teaching and learning consultant. Our contact information is on the screen, and I thank you so very much for watching this webcast.